Hello and welcome to the session on creating responsive e-learning with Adapt. This is aimed at learning designers and content creators. My name is Sven Laux. I'm City and Guilds Kineo's Technical Director and also the Adapt Learning Open Source Project Lead. I'm joined today by Paul Welsh, who is our Head of Learning Technology Innovation at City and Guilds Kineo. This is a rerun for the purpose of getting a recording onto our channel. We were previously also joined by Lindsay from Learning Pool and Chris Jones from Sponge UK. I'm afraid they are not with us just now, but they're still very much involved and engaged in the community. The session will be very short and snappy. We're going to try and keep it to 30 minutes, and with that, let's get started. Adapt is all about innovation in learning technologies. We want to make a change, and we are aware of a pattern, which is that big changes are really often triggered by, or at least accompanied by, changes in the hardware and infrastructure that's out there in the marketplace. And really that's what's happened here as well. We now have mobile devices such as tablets and smartphones, and many of us carry one or more of these about. And also the internet connection, or an internet connection, is much more readily available. And with that, over the past few years, the expectation from people has grown to access information on the go. And that also carries through into learning. Adapt grew out of these changes at City and Guilds Kineo as an internal framework. It's worth noting also that the software industry has changed. I no longer pay £50 to £80 for software packages off the shelf, but rather I buy apps cheaply, so £1 to £3 gets you some amazing software. There has also been a move to software as a service, and open source has become much better understood, accepted and sought after. As content producers, we all face the same issue and want the same thing. Many of us end up having similar frameworks across the industry, and ultimately we could say we don't really differentiate on technology, but we differentiate on customer service. Yet we have the ability to achieve something great together. And that's really why we went open source. So what we did is City and Guilds Kineo donated the framework, and we formed a founding group with Learning Pool and Sponge UK. And since then, DeltaNet have come on board as collaborators, and just hot off the press, so have LearnChamp. We're starting to see a real momentum worldwide, and it's also a good time in the marketplace because there is that gap. So we set a clear vision, created a strong governance structure, and released our framework. And the great thing is, it's available for free. You can take it and use it, and we'd like you to. We often get asked, but where's the catch? And I have to say there isn't one. We haven't yet got an authoring tool, so you still have to be a developer, or you still have to have a developer around you to work with it. But in principle, it's out there, it's free, and the authoring tool is coming. And what does that mean for you? Well, it means there's a new free product in the marketplace, which makes it easier to produce responsive design e-learning. And from my perspective at least, it means that you, if you commission or make content, you should expect Adapt at least. And by making it open source and sharing the technology across the various companies and the marketplace, in fact, we think that it'll have a positive effect because suppliers will need to focus on customer service because we no longer differentiate on technology. We also hope that makes innovation faster and sees us into a situation where we have less technical or less compatibility issues. And finally, what does it mean for you? It means that you can help us shape the tool and the output it produces. And again, we'd very much like to encourage you. But let's have a look at what it looks like in action. And for that, I'll hand over to my colleague Paul.
Thanks very much, Phil. Hello, everyone. Thanks for your time. We've probably used Adapt now to deliver projects to about 40 clients over the last 12 to 15 months, as Sven said. And really what I'm here to do is really distill down, I guess, 5 key kind of findings of our experience of using the tool. I guess before I do, I should just give you a little bit more background about it. It's built in everyday kind of web technology, so HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and it's essentially been inspired from responsive web design. So it uses a fluid grid to take one version of your course and dynamically redraw that or optimize the presentation of the content to suit the device that it's been viewed on. So that might be desktop, tablet, smartphone. There's many benefits to a single version of your course. The obvious being that you're just creating it once, whereas if you went down a more native route, you could create a desktop version, a version for Apple, a version for Android. If you wanted it optimized for tablet, that would be 3, then plus another 2, so that's 5. There's accessibility in the mix, that's 6. So, all of a sudden you can see that the single version's got a lot going for it. There are other benefits as well. So there's ease of maintenance. It's easier to get reports off your LMS because you're only putting one version, not a potential 5 or 6 that just reference. It's accessible out the box, and there's no kind of apply to any app store kind of lead times or risk of code rejections. So that's just a very kind of quick overview about it. Let me show you a very short demo of a vanilla adapt course that we created for the open source community. So here's an adapt page, and the first thing you'll notice is that it's based on a scrolling page layout, and I'll come on and talk about that in a little bit more detail shortly. But really just what I wanted to show was the fact that the page was constructed of these elements called components. So rather than having templated page layouts, we have interactive widgets or components that could be combined in any order the designer wishes, and that leads to a lot of rich, engaging page design. At the heart of Adapt's ability to be served up to multiple devices is this measurement here, actually, and it's the width of a single component, which is designed to work on a smartphone screen. So if it's single width, it will display on a smartphone. So here's an accordion component that would work on a smartphone. Here's a simple spanned graphic. Here's a narrative. But let me show you what happens when we snap down and see these full width components on the smartphone. You'll see that they dynamically redraw. So anything that's a full width will have a single width fallback. And the other thing to say very quickly is if it doesn't work on mobile, it doesn't make it into Adapt. We start mobile first and then we work back from that premise. So there's no kind of fudging or cramming or making stuff work on a phone. We start phone, then we work to the desktop. So let me just go back to my slide deck quickly. So you'll see we're putting scrolling at the heart of our design. And why are we doing that? Well, your learners are already doing it pretty much everywhere else when they're online. If you think of the websites you visit or the apps you use, pagination is actually quite rare now. Our user trialing and direct feedback from our customers are also saying this, that learners are far more comfortable actually doing their learning with a scrolling page layout. The other thing to say is it device-proofs your learning. So if you're using a tablet or a smartphone, you're going to be using gestures and you're quite comfortable flicking up and down the page. The other thing is when you're dealing with a small screen size on the smartphone, scrolling is inevitable. So why don't we put scrolling at the very heart of our design rather than trying to, cram in as much as possible? Let's make use of the limitations and use them to our advantage. It also means navigation becomes meaningful. So pages can now be as long or short as they need to be. A learner navigates to a new page now when they're done with that subject, not when the instructional designer has run out of room. There's also an old kind of adage, isn't there, about keep everything above the fold. But we think that's out of date. We think that people now are quite comfortable with the concept of scrolling. And I just wanted to give you a very quick example of a page where we've used scrolling in anger, as it were. Show you a course we've done here. This is a course we've done for TUI Travel. It's an adapt page. This is actually something we've delivered for a client. So we've got the above the fold is being tackled, and we're gaining attention by this banner at the top. But you can see now that as you scroll down, there's lots of components that have been combined to provide a really rich and engaging page. I would say that this is actually more kind of presentational of information rather than a traditional kind of e-learning tutorial. See, these components will be combined, and let me snap this down to a smartphone-sized screen to show you the responsive nature. You can see that the layout is changing. It's been optimized for smartphone. I'm replicating the smartphone via just changing the size of the browser. But you can see that the UI has changed as well. Buttons have become bigger to accommodate a thumb rather than a mouse pointer, and so on. So there's also more scope for creativity at scrolling page layouts. You've got a lot more real estate to play with. You can weave in your client's branding far more. You can take learners on journeys. You can, rather than having pictures in boxes, so paragraph of text being accompanied by a bit of wallpaper to the right, you can now use the entire page to weave in the whole visual treatment. And I'll come on and talk about how you can kind of plan for that in a little bit more detail shortly. One other thing I think that we really believe in, and something that we've learned over the last couple of years, is that just because you can doesn't mean you should. And what I mean by that is you shouldn't necessarily, just because you've got 60 minutes of content, try and make it all available on a smartphone. I understand that maybe clients sometimes are a little bit reticent about saying, actually, we're only going to give you 10, 20 minutes on the smartphone of your 60, and that they might feel they're not getting maximum return on investment. But actually, if you think about how we use our smartphones and the way we use them compared to a desktop or a tablet, people tend to use them more fleetingly. They're out and about. They probably just want contextual information that's important to them at the time. And one example we use is maybe there's a desktop 30-minute course on working at heights or manual handling or something like that. You probably wouldn't serve all of that up on the smartphone, but wouldn't it be great if you could serve up maybe a crib sheet, a checklist, and a video about how to lift a box appropriately, for example? So I think it's less is often more, and it's about using the technology to serve up the appropriate content at an appropriate time. It may be that 30 minutes on a smartphone is appropriate. Maybe that an hour on a smartphone is appropriate. The key thing is to have a mobile strategy from the very beginning and just carry that through rather than just blindly replicating the whole thing. Sorry about my computer popping up that message there. So what else did I want to say? Well, I think the other thing is, and we've already seen on those scrolling pages, is think about the big picture first and then wireframe it. So, think about how you're going to use all of that screen real estate at your disposal. How can the layout and the visual treatment of the page be used to support the learning that you're presenting? How can you get the client's branding in? There's also a much more complex relationship between the copy and the imagery. It's not kind of one half copy, one half picture. It's much more interwoven. So therefore, you've got a great opportunity to present a really coherent and well-considered kind of page. And I just wanted to share with you quickly a wireframe. But before I do, the one other thing I would say on this is that it's great to share the wireframes with your customers. Previously in kind of like e-learning old money, you'd often, deliver a design solution and then you deliver some kind of maybe 50 or 60 page Word document with your scripts and some scope diagrams perhaps, and then you get the alpha. Whereas with Adapt, because of the need to wireframe, or we strongly suggest that you do wireframe using something like Samick or some software like that, that you can create a far more visual representation of the page than they would previously have received via a Word document. And let me just give you an example of what those look like. I mean, this is one that we've done. It's in green is what's going on in the background. We always joke, actually, the most powerful component is Adapt is the blank, and it just allows you to create a window through to the background. And it means that you can kind of show really kind of nice visual imagery on the page. But to the right, we've got a narrative. To the left, we've got some copy. To the right, we've got some more stuff going on in the background. Here we've got a bit more of a complex diagram occurring on the background with the components positioned in amongst that interactivity. The interactivity positioned around the background graphic. And the client got this immediately, and what we're finding actually is we get far less kind of amends back at alpha around this wasn't what I was expecting. We get far more buy-in sooner, so it's actually proven to be a great tool for us. The other thing I would say actually is prototype, test and share. The reality of working in HTML, particularly from our perspective where we come off from a Flash background, or certainly over the last 5 years or so, is that HTML is a more challenging medium to work in. Browsers will render HTML differently than render engines. You're also delivering to multiple platforms. It's actually a really challenging brief that Adapt is meeting. So the way we address that really is that we deliver what we produce something called Page 101, which is a functional prototype that contains all of the interactivity that we're going to subsequently deliver to the client. And then we just test, we fully QA that on all of the target devices early. And also, again, we seek and share feedback from our client, and we deliver the Page 101 to them. We let them have a play around with it. It's a nice interim delivery before we move to the alpha delivery. So the wireframes at the Page 101 combined essentially become the alpha. So there's far less surprises and there's far more earlier oversight to the client. The last thing to say really, and we'll look at a few more demos here really, is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So the learner is still at the heart of what we're doing with Adapt. We're just bringing current best practice to our HTML framework. We're looking at what's going on in the wider industry and trying to deliver that to our e-learning. Really, the thing that I think that Adapt is fantastic for is it allows you to use really meaningful interactions where they add value. rather than just a means of cramming scope. I mean, if there's any instructional designers out there, none of us are probably proud of it. We've probably all used interactivity to cram content on the screen before, because of the limited dimensions that we're working to, whereas with Adapt we haven't got to do that anymore. You can use text and graphics if they're the most appropriate medium, which are not constrained by X by Y pixel count. So now you can kind of combine interactivity to create really meaningful, rich learning experiences. And I just wanted to show a few demos of courses that we created where this was an example. So this is a course we've done for Scouts. This is one of the earliest courses we've done. We're doing some really nice stuff with the Scouts Association at the moment. Here we've got just some copy and a blank on the screen. It's still just part of the background. We've got a Mythbuster component, which essentially is a hot graphic. We've got a confidence slider, and this remembers your score, and then subsequently, at a later point in the course, allows you to re-gauge your confidence and gives you feedback based on the difference. We've got some accordion functionality here, we've got narrative, video, MCQ. I think we've got about 20 odd components in total, and they'll just be added to all of the time. It'll be an ever-growing library. And let me take this down to smartphone size screen again. Simple menu for phone. You see that we've taken the background out for phones because it's not really relevant, it would just get in the way. And you can see that all of the components that previously we'd seen are redrawn. And actually, we've put a flag on one of the components, the Mythbuster hot graphic that I showed you, we've now removed because the client felt it was just unnecessary on a smartphone, a bit too fiddly. So we can put little flags on components and detect when on smartphone, remove, or in fact when on desktop, add. So one more course I wanted to show, just as an example really of how you can use interactivity to really add value. This course we've done for Logitech, and this was a course that was designed to train people that worked on the shop floors of companies like Dixon's and so on that sell computer peripherals in the why the Logitech product is superior to the competition. So we've got our kind of set direction attention grabber up the front, just simple text and a graphic. As we scroll down, we meet our main protagonists. Nice comic book interaction, but nothing too overly complex. Again, more text and graphics, setting direction. And now what we need to do is we need to get under the skin of this particular customer and then match the right product to her requirements. So it's not working on by the Camtasia. But this is a reveal component, and you can, let me see if I can reload the page and show you again. Just means we're not connected to the elements. There we go. So there we get, this is a reveal component, we're getting under the skin of the customer, and now we need to use this pinpoint question component here to match the right product and price range to that particular customer's need. Didn't do so well, got it wrong. Let's slide over using a block slider feature. And this is according providing the tutorial component. And then I go back and I can re-attempt the question. So that was just a very quick example of how we can use components and combine them in any order we wish to provide a really kind of rich and engaging learning experience. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Sven now. I just gave you a very whistle-stop tour of Adapt, but we'll be doing these all of the time. We'll be kind of showing you what we're working on. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Paul. And with that, we're at the end of our session, and I'd like to finish on a call to action, which is type our URL for the community site to continue. So really what we'd like you to do is just to join the community and follow us, have a look at what we're doing. Hopefully it's of interest to you, but be very encouraged to also ask questions and give feedback. And more than anything, tell us what you want. This is bigger than what you need. This is what you want. There are so many people involved already. And if you just let us know, I'm sure we'll listen, we'll respond quickly, and somebody will end up making something of what you've been asking for. I'd also like to say that if you're technical, if you're developers, please take and use what's there. It is free, there is no catch. And finally, just a call to everyone, please help promote Adapt Learning to the world, so tell everybody, and hopefully see you on the community side. Thank you for your time.